Hey guys, it's your friend the Little Historian here. I know I did a previous video for my review on the Odyssey, but I wanted to make a more honest, true one on my feel and more accurate to my opinion about it. Honestly, first off, I'd like to apologize to Homer for disrespecting his work, his story, and I'd like to apologize to the Greek nation and the Greek people for screwing up one of their greatest myths like this. First off, I didn't like the way the Trojan War scene was depicted, of making the Trojan horse halfway be sitting in the ocean, which is what causes the Greeks inside it to start drowning. I didn't like using Elliot Page, thinking she could be a Greek warrior. I just didn't think she made the best Greek warrior. The Trojan armor, I didn't like the way their helmets looked more like some kind of cardboard cutout helmet that little kids would make. And I didn't like in the Fall of Troy scene, that fight scene, where they had King Agamemnon dressed up in a kind of Batman costume. That didn't make any sense to me. The Cyclops scene was all right, but I didn't like that they cut out the interaction between the Cyclops and Odysseus, where Odysseus famously lies and says his name is nobody. The next scene, the Lystragonian Cannibal Island scene, obviously I didn't like that the Lystragonians were wearing medieval steel-plated armor when they're supposed to be savage, cannibal giants that would eat men alive. Also, I didn't get the child Lystragonian also wearing some kind of steel plate armor. That didn't make any sense. For the next big scene, I didn't like how Circe was portrayed as a traumatized, possibly abused, traumatized victim who was the traditional old hag, whereas in the original story, she was a beautiful sorceress who seduced Odysseus, which is the reason why he and his men stayed on her island for about a year. Obviously, I didn't like the diverse casting in the whole movie and the diversity of Odysseus' crew. I didn't think that made any sense. For the siren scene, which is one of my favorite scenes in the story, I hated the fact that you hardly saw the sirens. I mean, you saw silhouettes of them, but you didn't actually see them. And you kind of heard them singing, but you didn't actually hear them singing very much. So that didn't make any sense. The flashback scene, personally, I didn't think the actress playing Helen and her sister Clytemnestra was really good, because they weren't supposed to be twins to begin with. Although I did kind of like the way they portrayed Agamemnon's murder when he returned home from Troy. I kind of understand why he needed to be killed off, because he did actually sacrifice his own daughter in order to sail for Troy. So obviously he deserved to be killed off. But I just didn't like. To be perfectly honest, I didn't think La- Lupita Nyong'o was right to portray Helen of Troy and her sister, Queen Clytemnestra, Agamemnon's wife. The underworld scene, um, I liked the way the spirits popped up out of the ground in that scene. Um, but other than that, I just didn't think it was good. The Scylla and Charybdis scene, um, obviously I didn't like that Scylla was almost like some kind of giant worm creature, um, when it could have been much better than just that. Um, the very beginning scene with Travis Scott as the kind of Homer character, obviously I didn't think that made any sense. The Calypso scene was all right, but she's supposed to be a beautiful, seductive sea nymph. A beautiful, seductive sea nymph who seduces Odysseus for 7 years. And instead, they mixed her part up with the chapter, The Island of the Lotus Eaters, where she's the one giving Odysseus the lotus plant. And in the original story, it was one of Odysseus's first stops on his voyage home was the island of the Lotus Eaters. So having Calypso be the one giving him the lotus plant to make him forget everything, that didn't make any sense. The final climax scene where Odysseus gets rid of the suitors, that could have been a little better. I mean, it was all right, but it could have been much better. And the fact that they don't show the servant girls the maids who sided with the suitors, partly because they were sleeping with them. And in the original story, those servant girls who sided with the suitors and were helping them, they were punished by way of execution. Because at the time it was thought betraying your master or mistress like that was punishable by execution, to be perfectly honest. I mean, we may think differently today and be more sensible today, but that was just the way it was at the time. And the fact that the one servant girl in the film who was siding with the suitors, all you see is her hiding under a table during the climactic fight scene, and she gets away with not being punished at all. They didn't show any of the male gods in the film at all. They referred to Zeus by saying Zeus's law, which I think they were referencing to the ancient Greek version of hospitality towards a guest in your home. But other than that, they didn't show any of the gods, except for Zendaya trying to portray Athena. And again, I didn't think she was right for her role. Yeah, the way they were trying to feminize the film, make the men weak and somewhat effeminate, and make the women more of the main characters, I don't get that. To me, I think Homer was treating both the female characters and the male characters the same. And if you read the Odyssey, the female characters aren't downsized. They have a pretty big role. And the same with the female characters in the first poem, the Iliad, which references the siege of Troy. The women characters in that first poem have a pretty good role, pretty good sized role. So I just don't get why we had to go through this. I mean, I don't know much about the meaning of wokeness or any of that stuff, but I can understand for the past few years, Hollywood has been doing that to their movies for some reason. I just don't understand that. To me, the female characters and the male characters originally treated by Homer, they're all treated about the same. In my opinion, he didn't think one was stronger than the other and had bigger roles than the other. Some people might think otherwise, but that's their opinion versus my opinion. I'm just going with the original accuracy, the original tradition of the way the Greek myths were told. And I just don't like the way they changed all these things. To me, it just didn't make any sense. I mean, the cannibal giants are supposed to be savage, giant, barbaric cannibals, not somewhat taller fellas in medieval steel plate armor. The Cyclops is supposed to be, yes, a cannibalistic savage monster, but he does interact with Odysseus in that scene. And that's where Odysseus tricks him, first off, and saying that his name is Nobody. He doesn't reveal his true identity to the monster until he's sailing away. The Circe scene, she is supposed to be, yes, she's a witch, but she's a beautiful, seductive sorceress who falls for Odysseus's smarts and cunning and seduces him for about a year till he finally realizes he needs to get home. All the Greek soldiers, all the Trojan soldiers, they're supposed to be brave, courageous fighters. And instead, they use bad armor. They use a female portraying one of the Greek warriors' best, a female by birth, I mean. They use her portraying what's supposed to be one of the best Greek warriors in the entire epic. Plus, they changed her from Achilles to a character named Sinon, who wasn't even in the original story. So to me, that didn't make any sense. The very end of the story, when Odysseus and Penelope go on another journey by ship, hence another type of Odyssey story, that wasn't in the original story. So I don't get why they changed that. My mistake. Calypso could have been the way she was supposed to be portrayed, as a beautiful, seductive sea nymph. Not some middle-aged woman who's drugging Odysseus for 7 years. And then eventually, finally lets him go. Yes, in the original story, she finally does let him go, but not because she feels sorry for him, but because the gods order her to release him. I didn't like how Odysseus, the hero, was subjected to being a war, PTSD, traumatized war veteran. I didn't like the way they downsized the main character like that. I didn't think any of the male characters needed to be downsized or, in a way, feminized. I don't know why that was going on. This whole movie was just a slap in the face to the Greek people. It was an insult to them. It was an insult to the Greek myths, at least in my opinion. I don't know why they needed to make all these ridiculous changes. And if I'm offending some people, I'm sorry, but I like the original story. Hence why I brought up the Armand Assante TV miniseries version, which is way more historically accurate to the original poem than this version ever will be. Of course, they cut some scenes out of that version too, but it was way more faithful to the original story than this one will ever be. Yeah, this one, Travis Scott, I didn't think should have been in it. I have no idea why John Leguizamo was in it. The way he, the few YouTube interview videos I've seen of him, he doesn't seem like a nice guy. So why he ever got this role, I have no idea. The fact that I just don't like it. It's a bad movie. It's an insult to Greek mythology, and, well, I'm just never going to see it again. I tried it. It was bad. And I just don't think it's an accurate depiction of what's supposed to be one of the founding stories to Western civilization. And they trashed it. And I don't understand why some people want to trash Western civilization and praise any other civilization. I mean, to me, all civilizations who helped create the world and eventually helped lead to the modern day world, modern age, are good, have good meaning in their stories, in their myths. It's just an insult that they would trash one civilization and say, oh, it's bad, it's horrible, and praise all the other civilizations. I just don't get that. So, yeah, I would prefer the Armand Assante version over this version, honestly. It's more historically accurate than this one, and it's definitely not as much an insult to the Greek civilization and Greek myths the way Christopher Nolan's version is. That's more of an insult. I just don't get it. That's all I have to say. Have a good day, guys. Bye.